Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Beauty in a Post-Pandemic World, Ask Me Anything Live. My name is Reilly Stevens. I am the Director of Insights here at Retail Profit, and I will also be the moderator for today's discussion. As always, a few housekeeping items before we jump into it today. So we've allocated an hour for today's event. We'll be wrapping up right at 12. We've disabled the chat box, as you'll notice, so we won't be responding to any raised hands or anything in the chat box. If you do have a question, we encourage you to start asking right away, and you can use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen there. We encourage everyone to share their thoughts today. So we love seeing what you guys have to say after the event or during the event. Feel free to use the hashtag RetailProfitAMA, and we'll be checking out all of those and responding where we can post-event. Now for introductions. Doug Stevens is the CEO and founder of Retail Profit. He's currently in the midst of writing his third and highly anticipated book, Resurrecting Retail, The Future of Business in a Post-Pandemic World. Now I'll throw this to Doug to introduce our very special guest for today. Oh, we got to unmute Doug before he continues on.
This happens all the time, huh?
I'll learn how to work this thing eventually. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have everyone here today for what I think is like our fourth or fifth time doing this. I could not be more delighted to have the guest that we have here today. A few years ago, I was doing a workshop in New York for Estée Lauder. And I think it was after the first session, a gentleman came up to me and we started talking about customer experience, the future of retail, where everything was headed. And we immediately just sort of saw eye to eye on so many things. And I sort of left the conversation thinking, you know, who is this guy? Who is this progressive thinking guy inside this corporation? Well, that turned out to be Andrea Dorigo. And since that time, Andrea and I have had numerous conversations over the years about where the whole retail industry and the beauty category in particular is headed. Andrea is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Estée Lauder's global retail arm. That involves overseeing about 1,500 stores and many more thousands of points of distribution around the world. He's responsible for their omni-channel operations. He's responsible for customer experience design. And most interestingly, and this is some of the work that we've done together in the past, he is also responsible for new formats, for pioneering the future of retail. So again, could not be happier to have Andrea with us today. Andrea, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Always too generous with your introductions, Doug, but thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Well, back to you, Reilly. Let's jump in.
Let's jump in. So Andrea and Doug, while our audience begins submitting questions for today's event, can you provide us with a brief snapshot of where we're at right now? I just want to do a quick level set for our audience who maybe, you know, most of us are probably coming from the beauty industry today, but where are we at in terms of how things are unfolding or this quote unquote bounce back, so to speak? Doug, maybe you want to kick us off, and then Andrea, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so sure, and frankly, I'm more interested to get Andrea's perspective certainly than my own. But I think that generally speaking, what we're seeing is we're seeing a very uneven recovery here, if you can even call it a recovery, because frankly, as we've said many times, we're just not out of the woods yet. We don't know how long or how protracted this crisis is going to be. The medical threat still exists. We've seen flare-ups in places like South Korea and New Zealand, which really were sort of textbook examples of how you do mitigate the spread of this virus. And so, you know, I think that all of that leaves consumers with a degree of unsettledness. You know, they feel unsettled about their financial future, their economic futures. And so have we seen some spurts of activity? Sure we have. You know, China, we've seen consumers coming back to retail, but we're still not seeing pre-pandemic levels of spending. And then from there, it's really just a gradient through Europe, through North America, depending on the condition of the reopenings in those countries. It's a very sort of herky-jerky kind of back and forth activity level on the part of consumers. So I think until there's actually a hard and fast plan for a vaccine, the distribution of that vaccine, and that consumers can feel safe going back into retail, we really won't see anything beyond what I'm calling sort of a fractional economy. And that would apply to the beauty sector as well.
It's interesting, and as always, I think very aligned with what I'm seeing. I can tell you if we I can't say I've stopped reading the news on this, because if you read the news, you can drive yourself crazy. But just looking at all the outbreaks and coming back and second waves and the forecast of that. So, but from my vantage point, I can say, Reilly, that we very much, as Doug was mentioning, it's a little bit in different stages around the world. It's obvious that this thing has progressed. In the initial outbreak started from China, then went on to Europe, then came to the US, and then it's going down south to South America. And I think, you know, it reflects a little bit the timing of how different chunks of world population come out of this. What we see is, in general, there's a bit of a pattern. Once after the acute phase, people at some point do start coming back. Normally there's some pent-up demand for things that people could not source or cannot easily source online. And typically that pent-up demand is channeled through value channels more than full price, candidly, and to open air malls rather than enclosed malls. So we see this kind of spike. We've seen it in Asia, we've seen it in Europe, we've seen it in the US as things started to reopen. And then I think there is a little bit of things settled to a new, I can't call it a new normal because we don't yet know what the new normal would be like, but a new normal for now, in which people do things there's different levels of caution and different levels of comfort with going back into a physical store. In general, what we're seeing is that, as you were saying, that traffic is not coming back nowhere near to the levels that we saw pre-pandemic. Some of the people that have discovered, there's an entire group of consumers that have discovered online as an available and practical option to get, particularly for replenishment. In beauty, as you probably all of you know, I mean, there's a lot of products are bought as part of a habit and a part of a regime and part of what you're used to, and the trusted, you know, it's a lot of our company strategies built on these staples that become really amazing products that become part of the daily routine. So replenishing, it's actually easy online. When you know what you need to get, it's very easy to continue getting it through the available channels online. There's a whole element of discovery in beauty in general. All companies invest a ton of money in great R&D to develop new products, create new formulations, new things. There's a continuous race to the latest and greatest. The discovery of those products is actually more complicated via digital channels. We're going to talk about that in a second. But back to what we're seeing a little bit of a spike when things open up, and then different populations, different groups adapt to this new normal, temporary normal, in different ways. And one last thing, again, I'm not saying anything that we don't hear a lot particularly in the retail press. Fewer people go into the stores, they stick around less time, they buy more, so they're more intentional in the purchase. It becomes almost like a mission. I go in, I need to do this. There's not a lot of browsing. Oh, you know, let's go to the stores and stick around and spend some time, which challenges the whole concept of experiential retail that you and I, Doug, connected on very early on, and it goes back to even the work you've done in a company that I've run for a period of time, which is Perch. We came off the latest, let's say, development in the science of retail before this has to be experiential. It has to be engaging. It has to engage the senses. And the virus comes along and puts kind of a big cross on all of that. So now we're seeing a lot more transactional retailing. And that is potentially one of the things we need to be concerned about and understand how we can bring back an experiential element into the physical experience.
Hey, Andrea, I'm interested to know, you mentioned the word temporary, that, this is kind of the temporary normal, the new abnormal, but temporary. I'm interested to get your perspective on what that means to Estee Lauder. What is Estee Lauder, when you look at this crisis, what sort of time frame are you calibrating for the amount of time that you may have to exist as a company with this new normal? Is it like 6 months, a year, 2 years? What sort of time frames are you operating on?
So, I mean, like all large companies, fortunately, we have the same access as all the other companies to forecasts, medical information, and to the latest and greatest in terms of assessment that get made, and plus we have our own medical advisory board on staff that comprises some of the most amazing experts in the field that thank God we have access to kind of understand really what's happening. And my experience again has been one of a shifting time frame. I think we went into the pandemic initially. I think we all realized that this could be a big deal, and most likely was going to be a big deal. But there was the initial, and sorry, it's a long-winded way of answering the question, but the initial proxies were, SARS, MERS, all the various outbreaks. And the reality is that we quickly learned that we didn't have a good proxy and not enough information about the Spanish flu, which happened in an entirely different era, so to speak. So I think we have the variable time frame. We were acting, and I love that about the way we're operating as a company. We're acting incrementally and not necessarily kind of taking drastic action. Even what's being announced today by our CEO is by no means drastic if you compare it to what other companies are doing. There's companies that are shutting down the distribution completely, that are, companies that are leveraging the available tools to kind of slash completely previous business models. We're not doing anything of such. So
right.
we've judiciously, thoughtfully, and carefully reopened the vast majority of our stores. We're operating with caution. We're operating with a lot of attention to what our customers are telling us and what they're comfortable with. And it's working. Now, I think what we're doing today, it's something that makes sense for the next maybe 6 months.
Right.
And in the next 6 months, we'll have to reassess what the following 6 months look like, and so on and so forth, until we come to a real new plateau or new normal. There's scientists out there that say that we won't go back to a pre-pandemic world in the years to come, because after this could be another one, because a vaccine is a very elusive concept. Even when it comes around, it's going to take a long time before it gets distributed enough to really make a change in the way the population behaves. So I think we all have to be very nimble. And I think, I can't remember when it's this idea of volatility and uncertainty, this whole concept of VUCA, which was popularized a few years ago, volatile, uncertain, complex, can't remember the entire acronym, but I think this is it. This is the new world. And so time frames shift depending on the type of decisions we're making. And I'll say one last thing. As a company, we've looked a lot in the beginning. I'm talking about running the operation, right? You have stores, you have to make decisions like, reopen the stores, call people back, not call people back. There's a lot of day-to-day practical decisions in which, you obviously, we always had a couple of different principles. One is health and safety, first and foremost, of our employees and of our customers. And if you compromise with that, you're on a very, very shaky grounds. And beauty involves a lot of touching, a lot of high touch. I mean, we're a company that's famous for the high touch approach to retail. High touch involves, it goes back to the days in which Mrs. Estée Lauder was literally applying makeup to customers in stores. So that whole thing comes obviously under a huge amount of scrutiny given. So health and safety is the first principle, and then a good dose of pragmatism. There are certain choices that are in a way easy to make because they make sense regardless. Guess what?
Right.
Brings me back. Brings to the concept of the fact that COVID has accelerated many trends in retail. A lot of the retail that is not working today was not working pre-COVID, and
Right.
COVID just has accelerated it. A lot of the things that we need to do in rationalizing our operations, we should have done it before. This is just pushing us to do it. So those ones are easy choices because they're kind of, I call them even ifs, even if this is small, this still makes sense to do. And so that's the way we're being operating. A lot of it is uncharted waters, and a lot of it, frankly, is navigation by, I don't know how you say that, by sight. Kind of. There's not a lot of. It really challenges the ability to make long-term plans.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. And that's what we want to talk about is the long-term plan.
exactly. Now, to build on that, we have a question actually from Carly, and Carly's asking something that has a lot to do with what you were just going into, Andrea, in terms of, the significant changes in society that are now impacting our behavior. So at the beginning of lockdown, people were working from their homes, not having as much face-to-face contact, perhaps not as worried about their appearances. Now there was a brief period of time where everyone was doing their calls on Zoom. That even seems to be petering off a little bit now. So I'm curious to understand, how does this impact consumers' attitudes towards beauty? Are people as interested in cosmetics and beauty than they were before? And to build on that, can beauty brands survive in a world where they aren't, going into stores and having that high touch experience? What does that mean for the beauty industry?
I think the good news for the beauty industry at large is that beauty has not in any way, shape, or form stopped being relevant and important to people. With obviously with all the tweaks that have happened, so people have more and more resorted back to the products that they trust and the products that they love and the things that have been in their kind of cabinet for a long time. So and candidly, that is an advantage to the companies like ours that have long established brands and trusted products. There's definitely because of all this. And again, it went in phases, right? Because the initial phase of the lockdown, people just kind of found shortcuts and alternative ways and workarounds to pretty much continue to do what they were doing before. And then as the weeks went past, you could see people becoming more health conscious, more kind of safety conscious, more attentive to the way products are formulated, more careful in the purchases. Of course, if you're at home, the same way we completely stopped buying clothing, completely. I mean, there's categories that we've completely stopped purchasing. Of course, also in beauty, it's obviously been this trend that has somehow created an effect and shifted a lot of the attention of the consumer from makeup, because you need less of that when you're not going out regularly. You may need some for your Zoom and touch up, just to look good when you're on video, but you use less of that. But a lot more attention to skincare. And skincare is the more substantive approach to the health of your skin, and kind of almost like a little bit of the concept of beauty from within that Asia trained us on over the last few years. So instead of covering it up, just make your skin glow and look beautiful and be hydrated and perfect. So less makeup, more skincare, overall more prudence, more attention to health. And obviously, for the longest time, people have just gone online to purchase these products, you know, booming online sales, a lot less in the physical channel, whether department stores, whether specialty multi like Sephora and Ulta in the US, or our own branded stores. And, you know, and then, you know, this thing will rebalance itself. But beauty definitely has a role to play, even in this post-pandemic world. And is not as challenged as other categories by the changing in the behaviors of consumers. This is what I have a biased standpoint, obviously, because I sit inside a beauty company. I don't know if you experience something different and you see things differently.
You know, I think you've raised some really good points. What we know about consumer psychology is that in a time like this, in a time where consumers do feel in a state of crisis, that they feel cut off socially, that to some extent their sense of belonging, their sense of self-esteem is disrupted by a crisis like this, and we know that. As human beings, we work really hard to sort of reestablish that sense of personal value and of esteem. So I think the beauty category sits in a good position in that respect, because really that need for people to, we saw, you know, people longing to get their hair cut, you know, just little things, right, that make you feel like you again. I think are important psychologically. And so beauty's well positioned for that. But Andrea raises a good point. You know, if you're going into the office one day a week and the rest of the time you're having Zoom calls, that has an impact on spending. I mean, we've seen it in the apparel category where sales of shirts are stable, sales of tops are stable, pants are you know, falling off a cliff, so to speak. So I guess you could say pants are down. So you know, it does have an impact. And if you're only going into the office once a week, all of a sudden you're using Zoom to touch up your appearance instead of perhaps using as much product as you once did. So yeah, it will be interesting to see sort of where we land in terms of a more long-term manifested behavior.
Yeah, and as I said, I don't want to at any point turn this into corporate advertisement, because that's not the purpose. We're passionate about retail and talking about what we're passionate about, but it's for us as a company, it's been interesting, and it's working in our favor because of the shift between makeup and skincare, which do completely different things. There's the aspect of self-care and well-being is much more entrenched into the idea of skincare than it is in terms of makeup. Makeup, you make yourself up to go out and look good. But you know, when you want to feel good and look after yourself, that's where skincare and our company strategy has gone in that direction for years now, which has been an interesting turn of events for us.
Great. All right, I'm going to push to our first poll of the day. So you'll see on your screen for our attendees here, I'm curious to know how important it is to interact with an associate or expert when purchasing beauty products. So I'd ask that everyone just take a moment here, submit your vote. We'll see the live responses, and I will share this with the group afterwards. You know, we talk a lot about high touch, and Andrea, I sort of teased this out a little bit before, but you know, what's the approach when looking at physical retail as what was, you know, previously the vehicle for for providing those high touch experiences? In your mind, what can retailers in general, specifically in the beauty industry, which does rely so heavily on this high touch experience, what can they be doing to ensure that that experience is still alive and well, whether it be through physical channels, knowing that not as many people are actually going to be lingering there and experiencing those stores in real life, or alternatively on digital channels? What's the future of that experience like, or what does it look like to you?
So that's a super interesting question, and one that I'm quite passionate about, because first of all, I don't believe that beauty can do without physical environments for reasons that we're going to talk about in a second. There's going to be, in retail in general, there's going to be categories where where I can totally see this acceleration of the switch from physical to digital, from bricks and mortar to online, go kind of way past the point of no return towards a full kind of transition online. There's categories that are definitely susceptible to that. I think beauty, because it involves a high component of trial, of testing, of feeling, of how do you smell a fragrance online? I mean, how do you feel the texture of a cream online? How do you, you can do some things. You can, we've now got amazing technology to do tone matching for shades of foundation, for instance. We can do a pretty good job at that online. But I still think that long term, the physical will not go away and will be needed in beauty in particular. By the way, this is one of the things that, again, it's one of the trends we've seen. If you go into the malls in China, you see how now the prime locations are all allocated to beauty brands, because in a situation in which, in the Chinese market in particular, a lot of the transactions have moved online. Even big developers quickly understood that, beauty was one of the few ones that were going to stick around and be solid, even with the transition of much more transactions online. So first things first, what we did is spending a lot of time figuring out the second best option. If you cannot be face-to-face with a beauty advisor or with a makeup artist to get a one-on-one personalized consultation, and you're online, what's the second best? And so we developed things like live chat, live consultations, video streaming of video classes, training material that got converted to become more social media friendly and browser friendly. So we did a lot of that. And that was a fantastic journey for us, because it involved, people are a big component in beauty. People who consult, people who sell, people who test, advise, there's a big element of that. It's not a solitary purchase in which you go in, and there is some of that, but there's a lot of interaction with associates, and the associates were all at home, particularly during the lockdown. And so we found interesting ways of getting them involved and make sure that as a customer, I could access maybe not that same person that I was used to see in the store, but one of them via digital channels. And we've had tremendous success in that, and a real appreciation on part of our customers of this. Now, that only takes you so far. I think the things we mentioned earlier, how do you smell a fragrance online? I can be here describing you in the most amazing way a new fragrance, or a fragrance that I would recommend you to try, but I will never be able to substitute that simple act of you kind of tasting something with your nose, smelling something, and understanding if you like it or not, and if it works on your skin. There's chemistry involved. So that's why I say that as soon as it's safe and it's comfortable to go back into stores, a portion of the transactions are actually going back into the stores. And our job as beauty companies and beauty retailers is to give that confidence to the customer that it's safe, that it's okay, that all precautions have been taken in such a way that nothing else should be on your mind. We call it confident beauty, and initially we were calling it safe retailing, safe beauty, but it means almost like there's a non-safe aspect to it. It's more about the confidence. You as a customer should know that we've done everything and beyond everything that needed to be done to make the experience, absolutely safe and comfortable as much as possible. And those things in my opinion, long term will go back to the stores. Now, how things go back to the stores, not just for beauty, but for many other categories, that's a separate conversation. Because if you have, once you start saying, well, all the replenishment can happen online, can happen digitally. A lot of, some of the interactions can actually happen digitally and remotely. Then you start looking at, so this is a portion of the transaction, that you start looking at some of the customers, maybe the elderly, the older kind of part of the age distribution that may not feel completely comfortable from the beginning. You look at the lighter traffic load on the stores. And the big question for all of us is, how do we make it work? How do we make the economics, the four-wall economics work, if all of a sudden I have something like half of the traffic that I had before coming into the store? I can certainly look after these customers much better, but I can't charge them twice or twice as much. And so I think that's the big conundrum that all retailers across the board, and frankly across geographies, will have to deal with. So we found good ways of looking after our customers in many different ways. Where the chips will fall when the new traffic patterns will become, as you said earlier, the new normal. Then we'll have to figure out, how do we allocate resources to the different ways of interacting with the customer.
And I think that, I think if we've learned anything from this crisis, I think that we have learned that stores, physical stores, as a primary model for the distribution of products aren't a very good idea. I mean, they're impractical on a lot of levels. They're costly to operate. They require lots of working capital just to merchandise them. That merchandising is not always in lockstep with sales, but it is what it is, because you have to merchandise a store with all your lines and all your products. Moving product around is also expensive. So I think we've sort of learned that, but we all agree that there's still a role for the store to play. And interestingly, I think what's happening is that digital is humanizing. That's what's happening through this process. We're recognizing that the missing ingredient in digital has always been sitting there right in plain sight. It's that it wasn't human, and it wasn't being humanized through the advent of things like video chat, live chat, online support, assisted sales online. What we're seeing out of places like China, I was speaking with the CEO of In Time department stores, who, Andrea, I'm sure you're in Time.
Yeah.
Immediately in the crisis, they closed 60 of their retail outlets. They had basically no lifeline to consumers at all, except for online. So they made 5,000 of their sales associates into live streamers through the In Time app. And immediately those people were able to assist customers who were shopping online. What they found was that they were able, just using that, they were able to build 30% of normal sales volumes just through the app. So I think we're humanizing the online experience, and I think what we're also recognizing is that the physical store experience of the future will also have to change. That we will have to change, especially in the beauty category, where we're trying, we're sampling, we're touching. We have to install protocols that I think are going to become base expectations in the aftermath of this. Sort of a safety X kind of protocol. But I think we also recognize that this is sort of the final straw to pull retail into the digital age, and that all those physical assets now have to be repurposed to be more interesting, more exciting, and give consumers new reasons beyond just the distribution of product to go and visit. And that's a good thing. I think we can turn this into a huge positive for the retail industry in general if we observe that change.
So, Doug, let me ask you a question, because we've been back and forth on this for the longest time. You've established, and you've been a thought leader in that space long ago, that this whole idea, as you said, that stores as the primary way to distribute product are simply just not the best way to do it anymore, for all the reasons we mentioned. And obviously customer expectations have changed, the economics of the four walls, become more and more challenging. We know all of that. And the answer to that was, well, develop an ecosystem where your customer can have access to your products in a variety of different channels and shop exactly as she wants, when she wants, and without, diminishing as much as possible any sort of hurdles, making it easy, making it seamless, making it comfortable. Then what's left in the store is the experiential piece. It's what we talked about for a long time, it's creating that something special. So, I may actually not even buy anything when I come to the store, but I'm experiencing the brand and the products of the brand in a way that would be impossible otherwise, and may actually make me a loyal customer for life, whether I actually complete the transaction at that very moment in the store or not. When you've asked me about the time frame, what's your time frame is this still a proposition? Because I've talked about practical concerns, and there are situations in which, as I said, how do you smell a fragrance if you don't go into a store? Of course, I could send you a sample. I could send you 5 samples. You do that and then decide and then purchase. It's horrendously expensive, and it's also completely unsustainable. So right. We have the practical. Some things we'll keep on having to go to stores. What about the rest? What about those things in which we've been preaching that a great experience would continue to bring people back to stores? Where are you at? You observe so many different sectors, so many different industries.
Yeah.
What's your mind at with that?
I think that how my thinking is sort of evolving and I think the way that the industry's thinking should be evolving is that we have sort of predicated everything on the consumer deciding to go somewhere. So the consumer decides to go online to buy something, or the consumer decides to go to a store and buy something. And I think we've set that up in our heads because we've said, look, these are the channels we provide you, Miss Consumer. So you choose which channel you want to do business in. Now we had a fellow by the name of Michael Sakur on here a few weeks ago. Michael is an expert in new retail, sort of the Alibaba model of retail, which is a totally different sort of precept around this idea of how the consumer engages with retail. In Alibaba's world, they say, look, the consumer sits at the center of the model. It's not us, the retailer or the brand that sits at the center, it's the consumer. And what we do is we put every single thing that we surround that consumer with is a two-way channel for them to communicate with us, for them to engage with us, and yes, for them to buy things from us. So it doesn't matter if that's a physical store. It doesn't matter if it's an online fashion show that they happen to be watching. It doesn't even matter if it's a movie that Alibaba produced. Almost everything sort of links to commerce, and the consumer can just at any point in time decide to buy. So I think that's sort of the one big thing that in my mind has to change. I think in Western markets, we still sort of think very much in terms of the brand building channels to the consumer, whereas Alibaba just takes the consumer and puts them into an ecosystem of buying opportunities across all of these different moments, as opposed to thinking in channels. In terms of will we get back to the store as an experiential mechanism, I believe that we will, but I think we have to also expand our thinking around what that looks like too. And that the store could potentially become lots of different things. It can become a studio where you're now broadcasting really amazing content as a brand out to consumers and engaging them that way. It can become a stage where you have not necessarily trial opportunities, but really just content opportunities that people can come in and learn about beauty or learn about skincare and that sort of thing. So the way that we the way we treat physical stores, I think, can also continue to evolve, and that it doesn't just have to be a flagship store with lots of products that consumers can try, but stores can, and this is, you know, some of the conversations we were having just a short time ago, Andrea, you and I, about the idea that a store can become much more of a gallery experience that tells you a lot about a brand.
Exactly 1 year ago, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Was it 1 year ago? My gosh, it
1 year
seems like
ago.
it seems like a decade ago. That's
Yeah.
COVID time. But yeah, you know, I think, look, at the end of the day, and we keep coming back to this all the time, we're human beings. We're not digital beings. And so we cannot live fully in a digital world just yet. We still need physical experiences, we need human experiences, and we need emotionally connected experiences that feel social. And so there's a place for physical stores. I think we will get back to it. It's hard to imagine right now in a world of you know, latex gloves and masks, but we will come back to it. And I think we'll be better for it when we do, because I think that we will have humanized the online experience, and I think to some extent we will have rethought the value of physical retail as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just going to jump in quickly and release the results from our first poll. In case anyone was interested, pretty unanimously, everyone classified interaction with an associate as highly important or somewhat important, which is fantastic to know and sort of fits in line with what we were discussing surrounding that. Now, I want to quickly change gears. I'm going to take a live question from France, and France asks about the future of beauty and luxury from a millennial perspective. And before we dive into it, I actually just read something quite interesting about where the younger generations are purchasing beauty and cosmetics. And overwhelmingly, it still is primarily through physical channels. So about 60% of Gen Z, for instance, is still purchasing the bulk of their cosmetics and beauty products in physical stores, which I found to be slightly surprising, to be honest. So I'm curious to hear from both of you in terms of how you see the future of beauty and luxury adapting to this new generation. Are there differences from what you gather in terms of the way that those younger generations are interacting with brands and purchasing, or does it seem to be consistent across the board, and any changes we make due to the pandemic will be sort of a one-size-fits-all approach, if you will, to generations?
I'm going to let Andrea take that. That's Andrea territory.
So in general, it's what you just mentioned as a data point is fascinating. And initially, it took the first time we see that, it takes us a little bit by surprise, because there is this implicit assumption that the younger you skew in the distribution, and the higher the share of activity that happens online. And then it's actually not the case. You know, we've seen, and I'm talking about pre-COVID world, that the level of desire to engage in physical channels of, for lack of a better word, the younger generation, millennials, whatever, it surprisingly remains quite high. And in my opinion, there is also an element that builds, an element tied to exactly what you were describing, that we're a social animal. That's why we are who we are. And I think the biggest threat to a social animal is isolation, if you think about that. Incidentally, the lockdown is the extreme of isolation. And I think some of the return to stores is also linked to the fact that in a situation in which, you know, I am limited in my ability to tap into the normal large gatherings, you know, bars, pubs, events, cinema, remove all of that. I may as well go and meet a few people in an open air mall and do my shopping whilst meeting some people along the way, which I think that this element of the social aspect of retail has remained interestingly relevant for the millennial and younger generation. Now, there's a whole set of needs and wants and differences in the way a Gen Z or a millennial shops vis-a-vis their mothers. And a lot of that you see also in the transition between a type of service model of the department store, which is really, really by brand, high touch, very interactive, this kind of old-fashioned concept of beauty saving, which you really kind of trusting the beauty advisor, giving yourself to the beauty advisor to receive advice, counseling, you know, proper consultation. And again, this sounds like a little bit of fortune cookie wisdom, but you know, to a more empowered younger consumer who wants to retain more control of the process in their hands. So there's a lot more of tapping into the open sale environment in which I can try a few things, play with a few things, but I need to have someone there if I need to ask a question. I may not be able to decide if it's this or that. And sometimes is features and benefits and product features. Some other times, and again, we always assume that this new consumer knows more than anyone else. Well, you know, not always. You know, oftentimes you need someone to be able to ask, is this better than this? Or does this look better on me than this? You know, that's also that part of the interaction. And so that's the biggest shift. You go from a consumer that used to surrender completely to a trusted beauty advisor in the case of beauty, to a consumer that likes to retain a lot more control of the process, but still in a very, and I could say highly interactive way with someone else. Just that the beauty advisor needs to cater for this consumer differently. And today you have, by and large, kind of a little bit of some customers hanging on to the department store channel because that's where they find a certain type of trusted and comfortable way of purchasing, and some other customers kind of flocking more to the multi-brand Sephora, Ulta type of environment. And lastly, I think COVID is confusing everybody and kind of blending things in a way that is a little unexpected. So that's been my observation.
One last thing before, you know, we've got just under 15 minutes here. So I want to just launch our second poll, and then I've got one last question that I think will probably take up some time for us because it's a nice juicy question. You'll see the second poll question come up on your screen here for our attendees. Would love your response on this. It's quite an easy question. Have beauty products become more or less important to you during the pandemic? Very, very curious to hear everyone's response on this. And this brings us nicely to something that I really wanted to touch on today, which is the lipstick effect. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a theory that in the midst of economic downturn, people still turn to small luxury purchases such as lipstick to make themselves feel good. And this is something that I'm sure we can all relate to. And Andrea, you know, you touched on it a little bit previously. And actually I saw some tweets from someone at Estée Lauder actually saying that perhaps it's not so much the lipstick effect during COVID so much as it is like the moisturizer effect, which sort of touches on what you had mentioned earlier, this push from beauty to skincare now, and this idea of self-care and wellness more holistically rather than just the aesthetics of beauty. Very curious to hear your thoughts on whether or not, you know, it's more or less important to everyone.
Yeah, it's let me share a couple of thoughts and then I'm going to let Doug go with this because I'm sure that there's some interesting thoughts there too. So the lipstick effect, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is the original term is attributed to our chairman Leonard Lauder. In the aftermath of 9/11, in which, you know, we as a company saw a surge in the sale of lipstick because there was this feel-good effect and in a very attainable way. More recently, William Lauder has said maybe you said you mentioned the moisturizer effect, but maybe the mascara effect because people are wearing masks, and so eye is a lot more important when it comes to makeup. Um, it's interesting because this is not a this is a crisis like no other, and this is not a recession. There may well be, unfortunately, there is probably a recession embedded in this global pandemic, um, partially triggered by what's happened. But the aspects that come into play here about, safety, well-being, me time versus we time, self-care are very much, in my opinion, we haven't seen anything like that before. And add to that the element of isolation, the lack of human contact. There's a lot of that come into play. And as I said, I do believe that skincare, so moisturizer in general, taking care of yourself and doing it with products that are more natural, they're more, this whole area of treating yourself with products that are good for you, good for the environment. It's a little bit of the new incarnation of this effect. There might still be a lipstick effect or of sorts when people will restart going out in the social kind of and socialize and go back to offices, go back to schools. But in the short period, in kind of in the short run now, it's much more of what you mentioned earlier. It's more of a self-care element and self-pampering and looking after myself. And guess what? I'm giving up a lot. I'm giving up mobility. I'm giving up travel. I'm giving up my vacations. I'm giving up a bunch of purchases that don't make sense anymore. I will not give up these few elements. And maybe some consumers, and we see it on social, we see it on through the various channels that they communicate with us and with our brands, go all the way to saying like, I'm not giving this up. I'm going to dress up and I'm going to use full makeup at home because that makes me feel alive, makes me feel kind of that I've got my A game. Maybe those are extremes, but in general, there is an element of what can you do in this confined environment? But a lot of that has to do with your own well-being and beauty. And I think that is an interesting effect that we're seeing.
I think the interesting thing about the quote unquote lipstick effect is that it is not simply a theory on the idea that cosmetics can make you feel better. It has also been proven out by Harvard University to have an impact on cognitive ability. So people, in a control group without any cosmetics versus a people in a control group who were using cosmetics, those that were using cosmetics actually outperformed cognitively as well. So, I mean, this is not just psychological, it's physiological, it seems.
Confidence.
What's that?
It's confidence.
Exactly. It improves the mental state. So it's for real. I think in terms of, will COVID produce a rush to beauty? Again, it depends on how prolonged and protracted is this crisis. And what we do know about psychology, consumer psychology in this respect, is that we have a tendency to want to return to the things that made us feel like who we were pre-pandemic. Pre-crisis, we have certain things in our life that give us that sense of value, that give us that sense of self-esteem. And for some people, it's negative things. I mean, drugs and alcohol fit into that as well. For other people, it may be different behaviors. It may be different product categories. But certainly for those who already looked at beauty products and their own appearance as being a fundamental aspect of who they are in the world and what gives them value and meaning in their lives, I suspect that we'll see a disproportionate return to beauty. And that's why I think it's so important during this time for companies to really understand who those overly engaged customers are, the customers that really index way above everyone else in terms of their affiliation with the product category and their enjoyment of the products. This is a time when, you certainly don't want to lose customers, right? So to reach out and engage your most adamant, your most ardent fans is really critical during this time, because they're the ones that are going to be driving that lipstick effect. And you certainly want them to drive it for you and not another brand.
Yeah. I may add, if I may add one thing that we found through research, and as you can imagine, we run a ton of research at all times to understand, to poll and understand our customers. And what we found is that there's a whole cohort of consumers of ours, you know, dominantly women, that have a bunch of concerns, worries, practical concerns going on in their lives because of the pandemic, that have kind of tempered a little bit any lipstick effect of sorts, so to speak, in the sense that I think we may see that coming in at some point later, much stronger, as the old-fashioned lipstick effect. Today, there's people who are struggling to sort out their daily lives with kids that cannot go to school and they have to be homeschooled, and the whole change in the routine and the concerns about health and safety and precautions and protection. A lot of that has been thrown into the lives of many of our customers. And we see that taking a toll for sure in any sort of a more traditional lipstick effect, which I think once we get into a better handle of this new reality, even from a practical standpoint, I think we'll come back to that confidence building moment that we were talking about.
Anecdotally, when I find I'm having a bad day, sometimes all it takes is just putting on a pair of jeans and doing my makeup, and then you feel better. So I absolutely agree with that. I think overwhelmingly our audience as well, when it came to poll 2, suggested that 60% said that their beauty products are actually more important to them during this time. So that's really interesting as well, compared to 24% that suggested that it was maybe less important to them. And then obviously a portion of our audience who perhaps don't buy products at all. But that's it's been a really interesting to hear from you, Andrea. Thank you so much for your thoughts. This takes us right to the end of our session today. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And don't forget, if you have any questions as a follow-up or any thoughts that you'd like to share based on something that you've heard, feel free to use the hashtag on social media. Doug, thank you for all of the interesting conversation as well. And I'm very excited to hear from all of you and to see you all next time. So thank you.
Thanks,
Always
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Take care.